introduce yourself. You haven't said who you are very much. All right. I'm going to go off camera.
Good afternoon and good morning to those of you on the West Coast. My name is Rhonda Wright, and I would like to welcome everyone to today's meeting of the National Environmental Youth Advisory Council, also known as the NEYAC. It is incredible to have you join us from across the country for this critical discussion on the NEYAC's advice to the EPA. The agency appreciates the time and diligent work of our NEYAC members in preparing for this meeting and for their forthcoming deliberations on their recommendations to the charged questions presented this past February. Those charged topics included environmental justice and youth, climate, clean air and environmental justice, and addressing food waste at home and abroad. A case for circular and sustainable materials management systems. The charged presentations and questions are available in the docket at regulations.gov, as well as on the NEYAC webpage. Now, let me say a few words about my role as the designated federal officer, also known as the DFO. As the DFO for this meeting, I serve as a liaison between the NEYAC and the EPA. I am also responsible for ensuring all provisions of the Federal Advisory Committee Act, also known as FACA, are met regarding the operations of the NEYAC. Now, Carissa Cryan is the DFO for this NEYAC. However, in her absence, I will be filling in as your alternate DFO. Now, let's talk a little bit about the meeting operations. Given our full agenda, we aim to adhere to the schedule and ensure adequate time for the NEYAC's thorough deliberations on the final recommendations, for which we need each member's contribution and perspective to inform the advice that will be sent forward to EPA. Please be mindful to exercise appropriate meeting decorum, and please mute your computer and/or phone when you are not speaking, and pay particular attention to when your camera is turned on or off. These steps will help avoid any background interference or disruptions. NEYAC members, to comment or ask a question, please raise the hand signal available on Zoom. Before you speak, please remember to state your name. Once you are done speaking, please take your virtual hand down. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on NEYAC's webpage. About the public comment session, according to FACA, federal advisory committees will maintain a public comment period, offering the public who have registered the opportunity to provide comments during the topics being considered. EPA received 2 requests from the public to provide oral comments for today's NEYAC meeting. Now, I need to mention the NEYAC meeting minutes. Per FACA, minutes of this meeting will be prepared. The minutes will include a description of the matters discussed and the conclusions reached by the NEYAC members. As DFO, we will prepare the minutes and ensure they are certified by the meeting chairs and vice chairs within 90 calendar days of this meeting. The minutes of this meeting will be available through NEYAC's website. I will now share a copy of today's agenda, which will be posted to the docket at regulations.gov, as well as the NEYAC's webpage. If we can please share the agenda, please. This meeting is officially called to order. We will now have the member roll call. Council members, when you hear your name announced, please acknowledge your presence by stating here or present and the interest you represent. Alex Angerman.
Present. I represent Region 10, as well as communities and organizations that work with Native American communities.
Rachel Billiard-Brule.
Present. Rachel Billiot from Region 6 in Southeast Louisiana, representing the interest of Indigenous and tribal people who have experienced the impacts of environmental degradation and climate change firsthand.
Nick Blumenthal.
Present, Nick Blumenthal, he, his pronouns, from Region 7, representing the state of Iowa, representing the perspective of food insecurity and agricultural communities.
Christy Drutman.
Present. Christy Drutman, she, her pronouns, representing Region 2 and environmental educators and digital storyteller engagement.
Wawa Gatharu.
Present. Njuka Kathero. I represent Region 3, representing the interests of environmental justice communities.
Osa Senega Idaho.
Present. Osa Senega Idaho, EPA Region 1 from the state of Massachusetts, and I'm representing the interest of science policy communicators focused on the correlation between environmental health and the impacts from climate change.
Sophia Kiani. Meghana Kunapareddy.
Present, Meghana Kunapareddy, she, her pronouns, representing Region 6 from Houston, Texas, and I represent the interests of environmental justice educators working to build curriculum into K-12 education.
Lizette Perez.
Present, Lisette Perez, Region 5, she, hers, Chicago, Illinois, representing the perspectives of environmental advocates from urban communities.
Paige Siragotis.
Present, Paige Siragotis, she, her pronouns. I'm from Durham, North Carolina, so I represent Region 4 of the EPA, and I represent the interests of academics focused on psychology and the connection between mental health and climate change.
And Gabriel Nagel.
Present, Gabriel Nagel, he, him, EPA Region 8, Colorado, representing the interests of public school students focused on changing local policy.
Thank you, council members. We will now have introductions from our EPA staff who are in attendance. Please state your name, title, and EPA office. I will begin with the Office of Air and Radiation.
I think she did, but I don't think it's important now. I think you're going to go right.
Next, we will have the Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. This is Kareem Marshall, Senior Advisor for the Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights.
Thank you. Now we will have the Office of Land and Emergency Management.
Hi, everyone. This is Lana Suarez. I'm an Associate Manager in the Materials Management in the Office of Resource Conservation and Recovery.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That will conclude the member roll call and introductions. At this time, I will turn over the rest of this meeting to Gabriel Nagel.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. Welcome, everyone, to the third NEYAC meeting. The National Environmental Youth Advisory Council, or NEYAC, appreciates the valuable opportunity to provide input on the EPA's ongoing efforts to advance environmental justice and sustainability. As young leaders deeply committed to addressing the climate crisis and protecting our communities from the impacts of climate change, we recognize the importance of ensuring that environmental policies and actions taken by the environmental protection agencies and other federal agencies reflect the interest of young people from every corner of this country. It's our generation that's bearing the brunt of the climate crisis, and it's essential that our voices are at the forefront of the decision-making process. In response to the charged questions asked, The NEYAC has developed a series of recommendations that address climate change, environmental justice, and the circular economy. I would like to take a moment to give special thanks to the working group members for each of those groups. For environmental justice, we had the working group members, Gabriel Nagel, Alex Angerman, Kira O'Brien, Rachel Billet, Emmanuel Alcantar, Osenega Idahor, Asada Rashidi, Paige Tesouris, Christy Drutman, and Lizette Perez. For climate change, it was also myself, Gabriel Nagel, Alex Angerman, Nick Blumenthal, Kira O'Brien, Osenega Idahor, Asada Rashidi, Colton Buckley, Sophia Kiani, Wawa Gathru, and Magana Kunapardo. And for circular economy, we had again Nick Blumenthal, Rachel Billet, Emmanuel Alcantar, Paige Tesouris, Colton Buckley, Christy Drutman, Sophia Kiani, Megana Kunapardi, Lizette Perez, and Wawa Gathru. These members worked throughout the past 10 months in order to develop key recommendations based on input from their communities. And these recommendations reflect the urgent need for policies that are inclusive of disadvantaged communities, promote sustainable practices, and empower youth to take active roles in the solutions proposed. Our advisory council is committed to fostering meaningful collaboration between the EPA and young people across the country. And we believe these recommendations will contribute to a more equitable and sustainable future. In particular, we urge the EPA to prioritize community engagement, especially in environmental justice communities where communities of color and working class communities are disproportionately affected by the impacts of climate change, and to expand educational outreach and opportunities for young people to develop the next generation of environmental leadership. By investing in youth-focused programs, fostering partnerships with schools, and ensuring that EPA resources are accessible and inclusive, we can empower the next generation to become leaders in sustainability and climate action. We look forward to continuing to work alongside the EPA in achieving these goals and advancing meaningful climate action across the country. With that, I'll now be turning it over to my fellow council members who will share what this recommendation process looked like and what it means for them. If you'd like to begin and share your thoughts, you could use the raise hand feature on Zoom. Nick.
Thank you, Gabriel. Over the course of these deliberations over the last 10 months, it's been an enlightening process getting to have an inside perspective on what deliberations agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency has in terms of creating policy shifts that enable forward progress on a lot of these issues, such as the three that we were assigned to address within our charge questions in order to make a difference. And as young people, it was this extraordinary pleasure in order to provide our input for each of our own communities and how they're each relevant to the issue at hand and addressing the issues of climate change and environmental protection ahead of us. In terms of addressing how these charge questions specifically relate to my specific interest or representative interests of food security and agriculture, in particular, circular economies was a charge question that was especially relevant. Food and agriculture represent an enormous contributor to climate change, and there was an incredible opportunity to work with fellow council members of figuring out different ways that youth can be engaged in these issues. Because this is an issue that spans all the way from farmers themselves across the nation to consumers, including children themselves. And as the next generation, it's important for us to be able to take a stand and understand the sheer depth and breadth of this challenge that awaits us. And so being able to provide input for how the EPA can better address and work with the next generation to become the future leaders of this issue as we move into this pivotal time period to address this major issue for our country, our community, and the environment. It was an honor to be able to help provide our recommendations, and I look forward to seeing how the EPA enacts these recommendations into actionable policies to support the youth of tomorrow to create a better future for those of us today and those that'll be enjoying this future that we create today in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Rachel?
I'd like to. It was an honor to work with this council, especially in regards to the environmental justice and circular economies work groups that I was a part of, especially as representing the Indigenous side and youth voices. Youth and Indigenous and frontline communities are oftentimes on the forefront of environmental justice issues and on-the-ground movements, especially as they suffer the consequences of their homelands and communities becoming sacrifice zones for industry profit and energy needs. And we see this in places such as the Southeast, especially, where I'm from. And so it is important that youth see and know that they are heard when they speak out and that their homelands are going to be protected and that we have a seat at the table. And so I was excited and happy to relay these issues with the rest of the council and to see these recommendations come forward from this. All right, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, my hand gesture is not working for some reason, but I will continue. To mirror what Rachel and Nick said, over the past 10 months, there has been a lot of deliberation, research, and collaboration. And I think being able to hear from my fellow council members over the 10 past months have been very helpful. It's very interesting to see the perspectives and experiences they bring and be able to learn from that. I represent environmental advocates from urban communities, and environmental justice is a major issue for many of us, but I'm speaking for myself. Here in Chicago, it is a major issue. Frontline communities are suffering from a variety of issues, and being able to represent the voices of those communities here in the environmental justice section and providing those recommendations and really just voicing the concerns not only for my own community, but for that of many communities here in Chicago has been very vital. And I've been really utilizing my voice in the environmental justice section to be able to talk about the variety of issues you see here in Chicago. And yeah, it's been a great pleasure working with the council members again, hearing a lot of insights and learning a lot from them because there's only so much I know, but being able to collaborate with them has really opened up my eyes to see things from a different lens. So thank you for being amazing council members.
Thank you, Lizette. And next, I'll hand it over to Paige.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Paige Siragotis. I've really loved working with my fellow council members over the past 10 months and really learning about each perspective that they bring. We all come from very different backgrounds and represent different regions and all have vastly different perspectives that are all very essential to the purpose of this council. And it's been really rewarding to hear everybody's perspective and also see how they all kind of come together in the purpose of this council to really investigate, youth voices and making sure that youth voices are heard in a federal setting. And coming from a background in psychology, I've really loved integrating my knowledge about mental health, social psychology, and cognitive neuroscience with the environment and engaging youth with both the agency and environmental topics as a whole. Again, I've learned a lot from my fellow council members. It's been a really amazing experience so far, but I'm excited for the rest of my appointment on this council since we are not done yet.
Thank you, Paige. And next, I'll pass it to Osenega.
Hi, everyone. Osa Senegal Idaho here again. It's been a pleasure working with every one of these distinguished young people over the last 10 months or so. I was a part of particularly the climate change working group and the environmental justice working groups. And all the conversations that we had, truly, there was a lot of intentionality, the research that went into it. And hopefully everyone can see that in the recommendations that we put forward to the EPA and the administrator. As somebody who's interested in climate change and health, using that perspective within my role, specifically on the council as a science policy communicator interested on the intersection of climate and health policy, has been a wonderful blend of like my interest with my role, and it's been a great opportunity for me to grow. not only in my knowledge, but also my application of what I've learned. And in the last 10 months, we've been really considerate of multiple perspectives. And I think that's partly due to the way the council was constructed. We're representing all these multiple perspectives coming from the various EPA regions. But I think I have to give my fellow council members credit in how we've been patient with each other, even in times where there was like, oh, how are we going to really come together and figure out what are the key issues that we can agree upon to put in a recommendation. There's been a lot of cordial messaging, and even when we're talking about they're called charged questions. These are charged topics that we're talking about, and that level of decorum, something that's been really inspiring to me. So in our recommendations, it's going to look very formal, and we have all these neatly ordered notes and bullet points on presentations. But I think one thing that I really want to speak to is the fact that we put a lot of work being patient and considerate of each other's diverse perspectives. And I think that is something that deserves to be highlighted as well. Specifically in the climate change and environmental justice groups, as somebody who comes from a region in Massachusetts, Hyde Park, in the city of Boston, with a legacy of environmental justice concerns, this is something that I hold really dear to me. So while I have a lot of charged opinions on every single charged question related to environmental justice and climate change, because of my experiences with my communities and others like it in the greater Boston area, I still had to come with a humble heart posture to really learn from my fellow council members. And I think for various purposes, it's conducive not only to the success of the council, but also for individual, just like how we learn as young people. It's been really conducive to just like our individual career progression. So I'm really appreciative again of my council members, and yeah, I think the last 10 months have been a wonderful experience of applying passion with research into recommendations. And I'm looking forward to, after this, the next set of things that we are in charge of doing, because I think this is a great group that we have here. So yeah, with that, I'll stop.
Thank you so much for that, Seneca. I'm also looking forward to the next charge questions that we'll receive. And now I'll pass it over to Christy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think this experience has been really exciting just because I've been doing climate and environmental justice work for many years now, but I think being able to put it into practical practice is a different discussion. And I think all of us came from completely different geographic regions. And I think, there is obviously conversations that reflected those different perspectives. And sometimes there were challenges and, difficult conversations. But I think overall people, as young people, I think we all have a vision for the world we want to build. And I think because of that, I ultimately felt like we all work together as a team to make that possible. And I think it's really special that different people from, different ages and career paths and passions and cultural and ethnic backgrounds, are coming together to unite on this front. And I think because of that, the diversity of the recommendations will be reflected as we, discuss the charge questions. And I think it's a really exciting opportunity that hopefully, is inspiring other young people because we are each representing the communities we come from. And I think it's been really cool to hear the different perspectives everyone on this council has had and where they come from and why these issues matter to them, because I think it doesn't just have one definition. It doesn't have just one perspective or look on it. And I think that the way we developed this was, this beautiful mosaic of all of our experiences. So it's been awesome being a part of it.
Absolutely. That was said excellently. Next, I'll pass it over to Meghana.
Hi, this is Meghana Kudapredi again. I think it's been just a really great experience, again, like everyone said, being able to work with the different council members. And I think for me, the greatest thing that I've taken away is just the diversity in perspectives. I was open to so many new issues that I hadn't even thought about before joining the council. And then even on my own focus point, which is environmental education, I feel like I gained a really great perspective from different people on how they view it, specifically when we were looking at environmental justice and environmental justice education. Like, for example, from Gabriel, we got his experience on bringing that to public schools in Colorado. So I think just working with these different council members and hearing their own viewpoints on different things, which may not be the same as mine, but how we've been able to like take all those viewpoints and merge them into our recommendations has been something really great. And like everyone said, I'm really excited to receive the next charge questions and see how we continue to merge our viewpoints into these recommendations.
Thank you, Meghana. Next, I'll pass it over to Wawa.
Hello, everyone. Wawa, also my full name is Wichiko. And I am so honored to be a part of this one. To be honest, the most divine effect of being a part of this council the past 10 months has been the truth that young people are fully capable to be experts that can meaningfully participate in a federal advisory council throughout the experience. And clear, as Chrissy had mentioned, that young people are truly not a monolith, and we carry with us a diversity of thought and lived experience that is very, very valuable, and to me is an accurate representation of how varied people are in this community that we represent. It was also mentioned earlier that many of us are juggling these as respective leaders in our communities, and even in the midst of these responsibilities, there have been so many folks that have been engaged in healthy debate and put forth recommendations that will hopefully help accomplish what this council set out to do. So I look forward to seeing how the council's impacts continues to grow. And again, I'm super honored.
Thank you, Wawa. And next, I'll hand it over to Alex.
Yeah, I just want to mirror off of that and say that it's been empowering and also just educational time that I've had with this council. I want to also emphasize that the representation here has been amazing and diverse, and also just very awestruck at all of our efforts that have been put into these recommendations. And lots of things that people are very passionate about have came out in these recommendations. And I know that people have put their heart and soul into a lot of what we've done here today. I know that we wouldn't be here today without the passion that we have behind us. And I also do want to repeat that youth are capable of a lot more than some may set us out to be capable of. So I am proud of us for how much we've done so far, but like Paige said, we are not done yet.
Thank you. And Paige, did you have another remark to say? Sorry, the chat was just not working for me.
Yes. Hi again, Paige. I just wanted to also say that I've specifically really appreciated the perspectives of those coming from EJ communities, particularly the Indigenous perspectives, since I believe those perspectives are so essential to put at the forefront of the conversation. I don't personally come from an EJ community, so I've learned so much about really specific issues from them in their own communities and outside their own communities. I think they've had a really important voice and impact on the recommendations that we're presenting to the agency. So I just really wanted to point out how important and helpful their voices are to this council. And, you know, they will continue to be important. We are not done yet. And I'm also really excited to see how we approach future charge questions that we get and how our perspectives will continue to intertwine with one another, complement one another. I'm just really excited to see what we end up doing in the future.
Thank you so much for everyone who shared their remarks. I mean, especially being a part of this council, I think it's really a historic opportunity for us to make a significant impact. I think there's very few youth advisory councils that governments have around the world. So it's incredible that this is one of the first that's entirely youth-led and also entirely composed of youth. So with that, we will now be taking a short 5-minute break in order to accommodate the arrival of the administrator, and we will resume within the next 5 minutes. I'll pass it over to Rhonda.
Nope, you got it, Gabriel. Thank you so much. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Wonderful. And with that, we could resume from the short break. So yes, yeah, thank you so much and welcome to the 16th Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Michael Regan. And so Regan, we just took the past few moments to discuss among council members what it has meant over the past 10 months working on these recommendations. We learned a lot about what it meant going directly to communities, whether that was visiting regional offices, and hearing about the concerns that they were facing, in addition to kind of the unexpected element that has arisen of us finding a community here among environmental change makers. So with that, for the next couple of minutes, we will go over the recommendations that we have provided. But before we begin, I wanted to hand it over to you to provide some opening remarks.
Well, listen, well, thank you for all of the work that you and everyone's doing. You know, it's really great to be with you all. And I just want to remind everyone that I am very comfortable joining you all's meeting. This is your meeting, your space, and I am here to receive. So I'm really excited about what we're going to hear from you all. And listen, I know it's been a year of hard work, and I've gotten a preview of sort of what we're going to talk about today, and it's just so impressive. In 8 months, you all have rolled up your sleeves, you're drafting a historic set of recommendations, and to the point you just made, Gabrielle, you are have gained experience on the Federal Advisory Committee, but also experience from the community, your energy, your wisdom, all of these things. I've had the opportunity to connect with all of you, and it's been on full display for the past year. So I'm just really, really, really appreciative, and I'm really grateful for the dedication. I'm excited to hear about the reflections you all have, the recommendations you all have. And, you know, I am wanting to just acknowledge up front that we've made a lot of progress together, and we have a lot of work to do. Just a year ago, we were announcing the establishment of NEYAC, and now we're approaching the final year, and you all are ready to, you know, roll out some recommendations and some thoughts that you've spent quite a bit of time on. I've been told you've been fearless in terms of taking on this responsibility, and, you know, we're going to be better off because of that. So I'm glad you all have empowered yourselves. I'm glad you partnered the way you have, and I'm thanking you ahead of time for your work and your energy, and look forward to today's discussion. So with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Gabrielle.
Thank you so much. So let's get the presentation up here. And so for the run of show of how we are doing things, we're just going to go over each of these separate different charge topic areas that we've received on environmental justice, climate change, and circular economy. So after being charged to provide recommendations on the best ways that EPA can provide innovative solutions through youth engagement to build a cleaner, healthier, and more equitable community nationwide, we've gone through and spoken to different communities in EPA regional offices, analyzed existing EPA resources, and also applied our own experiences to develop these recommendations. In order for the NEYAC to provide policy advice, information, and recommendations, the council spent a lot of time working over the past 8 months in 3 separate working groups around the 3 different charge question areas of environmental justice, climate change, and circular economy. As a result of these research, we want to share our recommendations across each of these different sectors, and we'll start off with environmental justice. You could go to the next slide. Okay, and I will hand it over to Meghana to share the first recommendation.
So I think that's going to be on the next slide. Good morning, Administrator Regan. So our first charge question that we were tasked with answering with environmental justice was what barriers to awareness or access exist with empowering and connecting youth, and what approaches does the NEYAC recommend? So we've kind of focused on 3 different approaches. The first one is focused on enhancing digital outreach and engagement. So this is through like partnering with social media creators that are employing storytelling or other kinds of engaging platforms that actually bring youth in and make them want to learn more about environmental justice and want to learn more about what the EPA is doing. And so this can be done through infographics, short form films, posts, or anything that's just going to engage youth. And we included examples in our recommendation of what those can be. So our second strategy is focused on engaging schools and youth organizations, because this is where youth gain their foundation in education. And so we want to start teaching them from a young age. So this can be done through partnering with educational institutions and focusing on just incorporating environmental justice education into students' education, and then focusing on developing relationships with those in communities who are also trying to teach youth. So that can be community leaders or community speakers who are also focused on environmental justice, and then just bringing them to areas where youth are. So in schools or just presentations that youth feel like they want to attend. And then finally, our last strategy was focusing on developing user-friendly online resources. So a lot of the EPA's resources right now, we feel like youth just don't know how to access, or a little bit complicated for youth to access. So we want to focus on creating interactive tools that assist youth in navigating through the EPA's resources for environmental justice, and then also re-engaging those communities to receive input on the tools and programs that the EPA is using. So making sure we're gaining that community input and not remaining complacent on it, and just getting their input on what the EPA is doing. So those are our recommendations related to charge question 1 in environmental justice.
That's awesome. And can I ask one question on the first charge question? The last recommendation, do you all have any specific ideas on the tools or the programs that you're going to recommend to us?
So I think we were more focused on tools like EJ Screen, and gathering like the usability of the input on usability of those tools. So just kind of gaining input from communities on how like usable the tools that the EPA is providing right now are. So this can be done through like the TikToks that are already established, and just kind of trying to gain community input on what tools different communities across the country want to see, and then their feedback on the tools that the EPA already has.
Got it. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
And to share the second recommendation for environmental justice, I will pass it over to Paige.
Good afternoon, Administrator Regan. Again, my name is Paige Siragotis, and I'll be presenting charge question 2 for the Environmental Justice Work Group. So for this question, we were tasked with providing recommendations on how the EPA can engage youth in environmental sustainability and what youth envisions as a just and sustainable future. So we talk about a lot of things, but I'll just focus on a few since the recommendations are pretty long. But for this charge question, we focused on things that the agency could do in person, particularly as we talk a lot about digital engagement and other charge questions. So we thought a lot about specific events that the agency could organize to engage youth in sustainability and just engage them with the agency as a whole. Firstly, we recommend organizing an annual National Climate Ideas Conference, where youth from across the country and from across different regions can present their sustainable solutions and projects for their own communities that they have personally implemented. This would encourage youth to hone their creativity, participate in sustainability, like the charge question asks, and inform the agency of how youth envision the future. So it would also be a way for you guys to kind of hear from youth what they're thinking about and what they have done for their own communities. Secondly, building off of that in-person connection, we recommend creating a filmmaking fellowship featuring stories of youth who have significantly impacted their own communities and regions. This would create a platform similar to the conference, but in a more creative format for people who want that, to kind of, showcase what they have done in their own communities or what they think is really important to focus on. And finally, we recommend expanding on awards like the President's Environmental Youth Award, specifically for youth-led innovative sustainability projects. This would encourage youth to participate in sustainability by introducing a reward for novelty ideas and allowing them a space to share their achievements. So that's kind of an overview of what we've recommended for the second charge question.
That's awesome. And I'll put you all on the spot just for a second and say, if you had to give us a grade now on how we're doing in terms of engaging youth from an in-person standpoint, how bad or well are we doing? Because these are great recommendations, and these are great recommendations. For the most part, they seem to be new ideas, strong ideas. So I'm not quite sure how poorly we're doing, and if we embrace these,
I would give a specific grade, but I think that, creating this council and having youth tell you like what we have found interesting. And like, I'm sure a lot of us have participated in conferences and fellowships and things. So having a council like this to present, we are youth, we're young people, to kind of tell you what to potentially do in the future to engage people is kind of like the best next step that you could possibly make to implementing this. Because, you're only going to learn what we want from youth. So this is definitely great.
Awesome. Also touching on that as well, again, I don't know if I'd give a grade maybe like B+ right now, because I think there's room for improvement, but you all are doing pretty good. I think something that came up during discussion was a lot of the current programs that EPA has are kind of one-off events, like PIA, Presidential Environmental Youth Award, like receiving that, it was a wonderful experience. But I think that what we notice is a lot of times it's most helpful when these programs are extended over a longer period of time. I'll also pass it to Wawa too. I saw you raise your hand.
Hi, administrator. It's great to see you. I also will not give a grade, but I do want to give, some credit to you all for the recent EPA Youth Summit that happened during New York Climate Week. I think when it comes to engaging young people, it's really important to go where they're at. And something that I perceived this past Climate Week was that there were more young people that were attending. But most events during the week actually aren't very catered towards younger audiences. And so that was an opportunity for folks to actually really be centered and for eco-anxiety and climate anxiety to take center stage. So I think potentially there's opportunity to build upon these existing events or convenings while making sure that there is a space for young people to be listened to intentionally.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. That's very helpful. All of you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. And then moving on to the next recommendation for EJ 3, we will have Alex share.
All right, if we can move on to the next slide. Perfect. Okay. So this question was honing in on the on-the-ground impacts and efforts to advance environmental justice with state, local, or tribal governments. And so we recommended developing additional continuous outreach programs, like Gabriel said, not just one-off events that individuals can expect and plan for annually. There's some examples to the right there. This includes workshops and seminars to engage in problem solving and also long-term partnerships with community organizations, schools, and tribal councils, things that small communities and big communities alike value. Launching an assessment outreach program pre or post event to assess qualitative and quantitative impacts, including conducting surveys, evaluations, and other data to improve initiatives to better serve communities, and facilitating youth engagement in environmental decision-making. So this, we discussed, would be something like possibly regional youth councils, additional internships and volunteer roles, that could be federal or regional, and offering grants on environmental projects specifically led by youth.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Alex. Next, we'll turn it back over to Paige for EJ4. And also, administrator, at the end of all of these, we will have a lot of open time for discussion to get your input on the recommendations as well.
That sounds great.
Hello again. So I'll also be presenting charge question 4 for the Environmental Justice Work Group. So for this question, we were tasked with providing recommendations on which practices and platforms were best positioned to connect to youth, specifically youth and EJ communities, to EPA's environmental resources. They give a lot of examples in the questions, including but not limited to green space access, preservation, cleanup efforts, grant opportunities, and policy developing opportunities. So we address most of those in the actual recommendation, but I won't touch on all of them since we don't have that much time right now. But when approaching this question as a council, we thought both about digital and in-person presence. Since we don't have much time, again, I'll focus on digital presence today. But we first looked through EPA's social media accounts, learned more about the core messaging of the agency, kind of what we noticed from you guys on all of your various social media accounts. And then we thought about social media campaigns and accounts that we have found engaging in our own lives. We also have a few people on the council who run their own social media accounts relating to these topics. So it was really useful to have their input in it as well. So after combining all of that information, the council recommends leaning into video content and creating online trends on platforms frequented by Gen Z. There's some examples on the slide to further inform them about EPA's resources. I'll present one specific example that we kind of outlined in the recommendations. But one example we thought up specifically relating to the policy developing opportunities was hosting a challenge for youth in EJ communities to propose innovative policies that would positively impact their own communities. They could do this through an Instagram hashtag, for example, with winners getting recognition from the agency on their social media accounts, or potential policy implementation, or working with those people. This challenge would engage youth in problem solving and encourage them to interact with the agency. It would help them hone their creativity and also be able to present the problems in their communities and make you guys aware of that, and also have them be more engaged in environmental issues and trying to solve those. And it would also help the agency learn about youth perspectives regarding environmental justice and further inform youth about the resources at their disposal. So that was one of the examples that we kind of came up with. So hopefully that is a good example and kind of like tells you what we're kind of thinking when we provide these recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And next, I'll hand it over to Rachel.
Eletu, hello, Administrator Regan. In order to provide recommendations on EJ issues most urgent to youth, the Council researched youth and community environmental concerns, current environmental acts, and reasons for sacrifice zones. During these activities, we learned that the EPA supports and helps implement several misguided false solutions for climate change at community and environmental risk, such as but not limited to carbon capture and storage, liquefied natural gas, and waste-to-energy incineration, and that there is a gap in the Clean Air Act regarding carbon standards. As a result of this research, it is our recommendation that the EPA should ensure protections for clean air and water, vulnerable ecosystems, and communities in sacrifice zones by prioritizing climate solutions that safeguard vulnerable communities and ecosystems while avoiding false solutions which impose significant cost. Recognize and protect the intrinsic rights of nature, especially in vulnerable ecosystems such as wetlands, prairies, and old-growth forest, which are critical to environmental health but are threatened by corporate and anthropogenic activity. Advocating for stronger enforcement policies on industries affecting water and air quality, including implementing carbon standards for existing gas-powered plants, stricter enforcement of the Clean Air and Water Acts and sacrifice zones, and greater fines for noncompliance, along with a focus on environmental restoration in impacted areas, as well as supporting workers transitioning from fossil fuel industries to clean energy sectors to prevent economic hardship and to promote equity. Youth see climate and environmental issues as critical because they will live with the long-term impacts of today's decisions, especially those living in frontline communities where pollution and environmental risk are highest. Youth need to know that their families and their futures are accounted for and have a path moving forward in a just transition. Thank you, Yakoki.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel. And next we'll move to climate change. So if you could just go 2 slides down. So next slide. Thank you. So yeah, for the next charge question on climate change, on if the agency's regulatory process is sufficiently transparent for meaningful engagement with youth, EJ, and other communities. In order to develop these recommendations, we visited regional EPA offices like Region 8 in Colorado, where I'm from, to identify major barriers to action, and noticed that a lot of youth were struggling on understanding how EPA online platforms are supported, and also even the existence of certain programs like PIA, and even the structure of the EPA at large. We also discussed with various EPA officials and offices to understand how regulatory decisions are communicated. And from that process, we developed a few recommendations on simplifying online platforms for easier navigation and public engagement. This was kind of touched on previously, but making it more user-friendly on a mobile app, And then additionally, expanding formal structures such as advisory councils. I think NEYAC is a wonderful step in that direction, but we recognize that a lot of environmental issues are most often seen at the local level, even if they have a national impact. So maybe establishing similar structures like LEACs, as Osanaga put it, like local youth advisory councils could be effective in establishing a clear communication between youth and the EPA at large. And then the final recommendation was partnering with educational institutions, both K to 12 and then also universities, to promote environmental education and ensure that it is not just treated in one class, but rather crosses a lot of different subjects. So with that, I'll then pass it over for the next recommendation to Osanaga.
Thank you, Gabriel. And hi, I'm Mr. Regan. You're going to see a theme of education, and that's what we're going to continue with a lot for this climate change charge question 2. What are areas of interest to youth communities that EPA should engage on, and what are the most pressing issues in your communities that the agency should focus on or prioritize? And so we were continuing again with this theme of climate change education. There's a lot of variation across the United States for how climate change is taught in schools. So like, for example, New Jersey has become the first state to require climate change education across all K through 12. And so in the climate change working group, this is something that we were considering, the education variation, trying to reduce that variation through EPA initiatives that can help with integration, green jobs as well. The focus on sustainability is growing, and there's a significant push to create green jobs that actually help combat climate change while providing employment opportunities. And engaging youth in discussions about these opportunities and skills is going to be crucial. And we consulted, or I'll stick to the grants and funding for environmental projects. There's a growing need to make grants and other funding opportunities more accessible to youth and grassroots organizations. These funds often support projects aimed at environmental sustainability and can serve as crucial resources for young activists and innovators. Yeah, I'll stop there for now.
Thank you, Osanaga. Next, for the third section on climate change, on what areas of interest youth communities the EPA should engage on. After reviewing a lot of different state programs and curriculum gaps, also engaging with environmental justice communities on education and job opportunities, a few key points came up, which is, again, expanding K to 12 climate education, focusing specifically on EJ communities, but then also ensuring that we're developing the database of scholarships and internship for environmental careers. I think that it's an expanding space, and a lot of youth are demonstrating interest on getting involved with these different programs, but just don't have access or understanding of how to go about that process. Another recommendation, I think it will take time before we could really assess the success and impact of NEYAC, but I think one of the ways is seeing the impact of recommendations in their implementation within the agency. And then also related to this, organizing the EPA Summit and providing school sustainability resources can be effective in ensuring that we are making an impact not just at the national level, but also the local level, which is a common theme that's come up. And with that, I'll then move into circular economies and pass it over to Christy to share the first recommendation for that.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm gonna make sure my headphones didn't go. Okay, good. So our recommendations around circular economy is that we felt like it was really important that there's early interventions in shaping food habits and attitudes through educational techniques like gameplay, storytelling, and hands-on participation. We felt like when it comes to young people, you can't just talk about food. You have to actually, get their hands dirty and get them, actively participating and understanding how to connect with the food system at hand. And that way they feel more invested in preserving and maintaining it. We also talked about the ability to experiment with social media outreach campaigns. Again, we realize that there needs to be more storytelling, that gets people excited about reducing their food waste, at a university or at a school. And also, again, thinking about like how they're connected to, their plastic usage as well. And the last piece was changing the narrative around food and waste. Again, in your family? How is it connected to Indigenous knowledge? And we realized that that was really important because, again, a lot of these issues with like the food system can feel really disconnected. And if you're able to talk about, you know, how people are connected with their families and in their neighborhoods, then again, they'll feel more invested to, you know, the overall community and benefiting them by improving that space.
Thank you. And then Nick, if you want to share the second recommendation.
So with the second charge question of circular economies, we looked at how the EPA could better manage food as a sustainable and efficient way and really connect that concept to youth. And so we believe that the EPA should strengthen its community partnerships by enhancing how it engages youth and fosters environmental education. A key step would be to tailor outreach programs that align with existing science education curricula, making it easier for schools to incorporate topics like sustainability, climate change, and food systems into their classrooms. By collaborating with educators, the EPA can create lesson plans and projects that naturally fit into students' learning paths, ensuring that environmental topics feel relevant and engaging to them. Moreover, the EPA should expand its presence in locations where youth already spend time, such as community centers, parks, libraries, and community gardens. This could involve setting up interactive workshops, mobile learning experiences, or after-school programs that reach young people outside the classroom as well. By meeting youth where they are and providing hands-on practical experiences, the EPA can inspire greater interest in environmental stewardship and make lasting connections between students, their communities, and their natural world. This approach would not only strengthen educational outcomes, but help build long-term community engagement, empowering youth to take an active role in environmental issues. By tailoring these programs to these local needs, the EPA can better foster a deeper understanding of sustainability and agriculture, the way they tie together, and help lay that foundation for future environmental advocates.
Thank you, Nick. And next to Wawa for the third recommendation in circular economy.
Yes, so for our third task question, we were tasked with answering the question of how can outreach and education on making the most of food and preventing food from going to waste at home be most effective to disadvantaged communities in particular? And we came up with 3 core responses to that. The first, focusing on building connections to food. So that looks like promoting sustainable agricultural initiatives that integrate land restoration practices and traditional knowledge into modern farming techniques. The second is prioritizing community engagement and trusted partnerships. So that looks like combining sustainability, STEAM education, and cultural awareness to create meaningful connections and ensure inclusivity across diverse communities. And finally, by addressing food deserts and their consequences. So for us, that really looks like educating communities on sustainable food practices through school gardens, after school programs, and collaborations with existing educational institutions.
Thank you. And finally, but not least, I'll pass it over to Lizette to share our final recommendation.
Hello, everyone. So for our question was, what roles can food retailers and food service providers play in helping young people and those living in disadvantaged communities waste less at home? So for the first, plastic pollution and reliable recycling, by supporting grassroots initiatives and partnering with organizations aimed at addressing plastic pollution, it can help expand access to reliable recycling and raise awareness through education by implementing that at schools or local grocery stores. Organizations like the Recycling Partnership works face-to-face with communities, policymakers, and companies to advance recycling programs. The second was grant programs and community building. By partnering with private sector organizations like nonprofits, examples of this can include Food Rescue US and Imperfect Foods. It helps redistribute surplus food to disadvantaged communities while combating food waste. And just to give you some insight, Food Rescue US works with volunteers and partners with local businesses to serve disadvantaged and food insecure areas. And Imperfect Foods is a subscription-based organization rather than a lot of produce getting thrown away for imperfections, they get bought by a subscription based from different customers across the country. So those are the recommendations we have for this. Thank you.
So with that, as you can see, we took your charge question seriously over the past 8 months, working through a lot of different potential steps that the agency can take to implement them. And now we just want to open the floor to you and any other EPA staff who have any additional questions for the council about our recommendations. We can go topic by topic if that makes most sense. And yeah, hope you were able to get some notes down on that.
Well, listen, thank you, Gabriel, for leading this conversation and for everyone contributing to this conversation. Number one, I was taking a few notes here, and this is just fantastic. And the way I'm receiving this is in sort of a few categories. So maybe I can just communicate to you all how I'm receiving it, and then we can maybe talk through it. The first is obviously you all took this very serious, and these recommendations, I'm receiving them as recommendations that are very strategic, very thoughtful, and very doable. A lot of times when we receive recommendations, immediately we're saying, well, half of these things we can't do. The majority of these things, I actually believe that we can accomplish. I think that some of the things that stand out to me are really the emphasis you all have put on the online platforms that we have or need to enhance, because we have a lot of information that we're just not maybe effectively getting out there. And so I think trying to package this information through online platform enhancement is critical, but also I hear you loud and clear that you're making a very strong play for in-person engagement, in-person recognition, in-person sort of group thinking. And so those are things that I'm receiving extremely well. I was struck by the recommendation that sort of really drove towards some sort of grants or grant programs that were specifically designed to empower youth. I know that we have some historic resources and some new grant programs we're designing. That does make me question whether or not we're doing an adequate job of ensuring that young people are competitive for those resources. So I really like that. And the other thing is really just trying to think through. I mean, we have a pretty strong education and outreach program that I think would be really receptive to a lot of the ideas that you all have put forward. The question is, how do we structure a process so that we can have a back and forth over which ideas have we tried before, what kind of barriers, which ideas have we never tried before, and how do we pursue those? Because the education and outreach component of this, of the presentation of all the categories is absolutely so important. And then one final thing, and these are just comments, because I really want to spend time digging through the materials that you all have spent so much time preparing, but these are just sort of immediate reactions. I know that on the last recommendation, I believe under the umbrella of environmental justice, one thing that caught my ear, and I want to process that, is the promotion or the articulation by the agency of false solutions. And so I want to really unpack that, because I think that really does get into the policy regulatory realm that will require a lot more discussion, because I think we have to have an honest conversation about what the law requires, what the law provides, and possibly some partnerships that we might have to pursue together to get some congressional action to give the agency the ability to consider or not consider some things. So I sort of, took in all this information topic by topic, but also in these broad categories of trying to find resources and grants that can be led and implemented by young people, education outreach, online, in person, but also there seem to be some tensions there on some solutions that maybe the agency is required to do by law, maybe written in legislation. Maybe we think they're good ideas and they're bad ideas. but I want to really drill down very quickly into the characterization of false solutions perpetuated by the agency so that we can kind of just close that gap. That's an immediate reaction. I'm going to absolutely spend some time combing through these recommendations in grave detail. And the last thing I want to say before I turn it over to Kareem is I think that in order for us to set expectations, I really would like to have a conversation about which of these do we tackle first or prioritize. I do believe that we should all make a concerted effort to go through this entire list, give it an honest try, and grade ourselves on that. But I really would like for us to be completely aligned in the order by which we try to eat this elephant, because it's really big, a lot there. And so I want to really think about how do we collectively set expectations for the priorities for ticking through this list. With that, I'll turn it over to Kareem.
Thank you, Administrator. So coming from the Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights, I'll restrict my questions to the recommendations that you guys gave on environmental justice. First off, amazing work. Just like the Administrator said, this was robust, it's meaty, it's a lot of action items. You give us a lot of stuff that we can move on relatively quickly. So thank you for that. Thank you for the time and energy you put into it as well. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask is a lot of what we end up doing as the federal government is we build out programs and we build out operations. And over time, we assume that they're working and we assume that everyone knows about them. So I think the sort of core question that I have, which sort of runs through all of your recommendations, is how do we package information in a way where we can tell you what we're doing so that it is in a way that is accessible to you. I will use the EJ Screen recommendation that you gave as an example. So EJ Screen has these like regular trainings that they put on, and every time there's an update, there's a series of like update notes that we give. We give a series of updated trainings, but our primary audience is usually like organizations that are already using it, other parts of the government that are using it, and programmers who are GIS certified who are using this already. But it's a powerful tool for everyone. So we would be really interested in hearing your thoughts on how we can make sure that the existing feedback mechanism can be improved, or what the feedback mechanism could look like if we need to create a new one. So that's the first core question. And then the secondary one is, for a lot of this stuff, you guys have really great ideas that we'd like to be able to directly tap into. And so not to give you additional homework, but if you have stories that you wanted us to highlight as far as being able to talk about champions of climate that are youth that are doing great work, we'd like your help in identifying them, just because the federal government is large, but we are not omnipotent or omniscient. So being able to identify these stories that you want us to lift up, that will help advance our mission and help advance the good work that's happening, we would really appreciate the assistance of being able to identify and connect with those stories. And I'll listen to any responses.
Yeah, and on that last point, which stories, but also how, because it is identifying which stories, but also I think we're not afraid to say some of you all on this call are experts in what you do. So when we're on calls with experts in the private sector or experts with other agency, there is the identification, but then there's also, hey, help us understand the how, because I think that we would like some collaboration in a way that really is hands-on, so that this is not an academic exercise or conversation. It's you guys coming in and basically giving us a tutorial on how it's done, how it works, how we build up these metrics. And it is the choice of the story, but it's also how you do it. So we'll need to dig into that a little bit.
So if I might add, and I also want to say thank you for all the great work you've done, and lots of substance. We really, really appreciate your thoughts. And I'm going to speak to the climate piece. I second Administrator Regan's comment on the ideas we heard on the importance of climate, both as a matter of engagement that the agency needs to do related to your recommendations of creating working groups or creating advisory councils for you to give us your views on this, but also incorporating it in the environmental education curriculum, which there's a lot to unpack there. You mentioned we need to focus on climate and community. And as the administrator said, and we look forward to having more of a conversation on your point on fall solutions. But one thing that I would also like to ask about is, because the agency's agenda is just so broad on the in the climate space, what are near-term areas that you think we should be focusing on that matter to youth and that also meet that angle that you're talking about of being focused on the needs of communities? Thanks.
Thank you so much. Lana, we'll take another question too.
Sure, thank you. I again wanted to echo all of my colleagues' responses about just thanking the council for all of the thought and work that you put into these recommendations. Specifically on the circular economy piece and reducing food waste, I really appreciate how you've put in those recommendations, how strengthening the connection with food can help us reduce waste, and meeting youth where they are. And some of my questions related to that are about any specific examples that you might have about the types of opportunities that anyone on the council has experienced and what was the reaction to those types of experience. Again, I think similar to my colleagues, looking for specific examples of the types of opportunities that we could create to meet youth where they are. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I mean, yeah, that's a lot of important things to think about. We will definitely be reaching out afterwards and maybe share some of those specific experiences from council members. But just to actually get into answering some of the questions as we think about them, I wanted to pass it over to Paige, who had a thought on the prioritization of recommendations.
Hello, everyone. As far as which ones I think the EPA should tackle first, I know it can be very stressful to see like all of these recommendations. There's so much truly that we are, telling you guys that we think would be interesting. So, and starting is the hardest part, especially when you see this big monolith of like ideas that you just don't know which one to tackle first. I would honestly say that, go over the letter, pick the ones that are the easiest for you guys to start with and kind of start implementing those first, because that will help, get off on the right foot and actually start kind of picking away at this like really hard monolith of ideas. So as far as finding a place to like start, you can kind of start with the ones that are easiest to implement that you think you can do pretty easily or quickly. And then, once you're kind of in the groove of looking at these recommendations, then you can go into the ones that will, be harder to implement, and you'll kind of feel like you've tackled some of the recommendations before getting to the really, really difficult ones.
Yeah. Well, and Paige, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And what we'll do is because you sort of touched on this a little bit, and this is sort of, we see it as a confidence building exercise as well. And so what may be the easiest for us may not be the most important for you all, or it could be that something that we believe is low-hanging fruit is actually one of your top priorities. So I think it's important that as we really digest all this information, we be communicative to you all on where we plan to start and how we plan to hold ourselves accountable. And that way you all will have it in a very transparent manner. This is where we're beginning. These are the reasons why. And then if you say, okay, well, we kind of wanted y'all to start with the easy stuff, but the stuff you're starting with is not what we want you to start with, then you can kind of come back, and at least we're all starting from a similar point. So we'll start there and maybe digest all of this and then try to regurgitate something that's really transparent. And then that way we're all kind of holding hands and moving forward together. And some of these things can be done simultaneously. And so we just probably need to come up with some sort of timeline, some metrics, and some rationale for why we are tackling certain things first. So I appreciate that response.
Thank you. And I know timing is close. Rachel, I saw you do have a comment, but maybe we could touch base with the administrator afterwards or the EPA team. With that, we'll be taking into consideration all of the points that you all have raised on bringing up specific stories and experiences, and maybe getting a list together then of which are the most important for us as a council to work on. And I'll pass it back over to the administrator if you have any final remarks before we enter our break.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is, first of all, thank you. I truly want to say thank you because I see these as thoughtful, strategic, actionable items. And so I want to build on this momentum and really work with the team and identify which ones are we going to begin to tackle first so that we can demonstrate to you all that we're taking you all serious, we're taking your time serious, and that these are some results that I believe we also need to achieve in a relatively short period of time to continue to build confidence with the public. So I want to say thank you. We're going to be very serious about focusing on these. And I do believe that, you know, some of these things will work in tandem. And so we will begin to investigate opportunities for the grants. We can look at operationalizing the online and the in-person. And I really do want to be very clear that I respect the opinions of the members of this committee. And so where we really need to very early on look at some of the policy differences that we have or some of the concerns of the actions we're taking. Let's do that sooner rather than later so that those tensions don't spill into the areas where we can make immediate progress. I think if we can do that, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. If we can do that, I think we'll make a lot of progress and you all will be the fruitful partners that we know you can be.
Thank you so much. Well, we are looking forward to working with you over our next year here and getting the next set of recommendations too. With that, I'll pass it over to Rhonda.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Administrator Regan. And thank you, Council. We will now take a 2-minute break. Welcome back, everyone. We are now going to enter into our public comment session. Before we get started, please be mindful to exercise appropriate meeting decorum. We ask that you please mute your computer and or phone when you are not speaking and pay particular attention to when your camera is turned on or off. I will now do a roll call to ensure we still have a quorum. As I call your name, council members, when you hear your name announced, please acknowledge your presence by stating here or present. Alex Angerman.
Present.
Rachel Billiard-Brule.
Present.
Nick Blumenthal.
Present.
Christy Drutman. Wawa Gatheru.
Present.
Osanega Adahor.
Present.
Megana Punaparade.
Present.
Lizette Perez.
Present.
Paige Sirigotis.
Present.
Gabriel Nagel.
Present.
Christy Drutman. Okay, I would now turn this portion over to Gabriel.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. So yeah, welcome back, everyone. We're now going to begin the next portion of this meeting, which is the public comment period. Members of the public who have registered to provide oral comments will have an opportunity to do so during this time. If you did not register for an oral comment, you will be able to still submit written comments through the website. I'll now turn this portion of the meeting over to Kurt Ellie.
Thank you, Gabriel. We had 2 registered public commenters. I only see 1 online at the moment. So we'll just get started with Nora Strand. Nora, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, thank you. We have Nora online, and Nora, go ahead whenever you're ready. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Right. Hi, I'm Nora Strandy. I'm from Minnesota. I grew up in an area east of St. Paul that's been highly contaminated by the toxic forever chemicals known as PFAS. My sister, Amara, died last year of cancer, and she was one of 22 students who had attended Tartan High School who have been diagnosed with cancer between 2002 and 2018. Last year, while Amara was in hospice, she dedicated her life to testify at the Minnesota State Capitol for a law that would ban PFAS from consumer products in 11 different product categories, including dental floss, children's toys, and carpeting. 1 week after Amara died, the bill passed into law and was named Amara's Law, and it is the toughest law on PFAS in the world. PFAS has so far been detected in the drinking water of more than 7,000 communities, including hundreds of schools. Thanks to the EPA's new PFAS drinking water standard, all of our schools, as well as our homes, will soon have far less PFAS in the drinking water. But there are many other ways we can reduce PFAS exposures in our schools. For example, schools could choose to use cleaning products that meet EPA's Safer Choice standard. And there are more than 1,700 cleaning products that meet this standard, which prohibits the use of PFAS. Many other products in our schools contain PFAS, but more and more companies are making their products without PFAS as an added ingredient, including everything from clothing like school uniforms, to carpets, to cafeteria cookware. Schools could also buy paints and furniture made without PFAS, and stop using pesticides made with PFAS, and avoid buying artificial turf made with PFAS, or buying artificial turf at all. Students spend 1/3 of their lives in school at a time when their developing bodies are especially susceptible to the harms caused by PFAS. So, let's work together to help schools get the resources they need to avoid needless uses of PFAS. While the EPA is helping by reducing PFAS in tap water, there's so much more that can be done to reduce exposure. So let's work together to help protect students from exposure to PFAS while they're at school. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Next, we had 2 public commenters. The second person is Ken. I apologize. Ken Spari. Ken, are you here? Ken Sparry. Okay, I'm going to hand it back off to you, Gabriel. But before I do so, I know the
I'm
public.
here now.
You are okay. Go ahead, please. You have 3 minutes.
I just wanted to say I'm glad to hear that y'all are doing this again. I was the chair for the Youth Advisory Board in Region 7 under Jerome Swore back in the 70s, and we did a lot of good. I'm glad to see some young people involved with giving you all input. Am I still there?
Yes, you're here.
It doing you went away, but okay. That's all I wanted to say. I'm glad to see that the Environmental Protection Agency is reaching out to some young people to give them input. We had a unique situation. We were non-paid in-house employees, so it was quite unique to be able to sit with a bunch of people who were leaders of their divisions and ask them why. And when they said, well, "Why do I have to answer?" the administrator, because you have to. And we did a lot of change that way. We actually did the first land use study in the nation here in Region 7. So those were good days. I hope you guys have some good days too. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Ken. For anyone who's interested in providing comments, you do have the option of submitting those comments in writing at NEYAC, NEYAC @epa.gov. And with that, I will hand it back off to you, Gabriel.
Thank you so much, Kurt. And now I will hand it to Rhonda to continue the meeting.
Thank you so much. For our closing remarks today, I would like to welcome and introduce to you EPA's Acting Deputy Administrator, Jane Nashidi. Thank you, Rhonda, and good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be able to see you again, albeit virtually this time. I'm happy to reconnect with all of you at this time in my new role as the Acting Deputy Administrator. I recall that last year, when Administrator Regan announced the National Environmental Youth Advisory Council, it was an exciting day for us at the agency because we created this platform for young people to share with us your thoughts and your recommendations about how we can do our job better in terms of protecting public health and the environment for all communities and for all generations. We need young people. We need your knowledge, your passion, and your experiences to help us meet our mission. And as members of the Millennium and Gen Z generations, you have grown up witnessing and experiencing environmental justices firsthand. And I just want to take this moment to thank Nora for sharing her very personal story about her sister Mara and what she experienced with regards to drinking water and PFAS. We all are experiencing these harmful effects that are affecting not only our families, but our communities. And as you know, we have one crisis, the climate crisis, that we are also facing, which is very scary, and the real impacts that are affecting generations across the country and our planet. What gives me hope is that youth like yourselves are inspired to act because you have the courage to believe in what is possible. As youth leaders, you were asked to provide your input on a range of environmental issues and policies that are important to youth based on community perspectives that you represent. These topics included climate change, recycling and plastic waste reduction, environmental justice, and food loss and waste. Today, as you submit your first set of recommendations for the agency's consideration, we are celebrating another exciting moment in the important relationship between NEYAC and EPA. First and foremost, I want to thank you for all the work you have put in the last 12 months to bring these recommendations to EPA.
I know that these recommendations have come as a result of many long meetings filled with fruitful discussion amongst yourselves, as well as time spent preparing and researching ahead of the meetings. This while you were navigating school, work, and your own personal lives. As I look at the recommendations, I can see that you took the assignment very seriously. With these recommendations, you are reimagining a planet, what a planet could look like, and you are pushing the kind of innovative solutions that will create lasting impacts. Youth have always been at the forefront of every major environmental movement in recent history, and the same rings true today. EPA recognizes that engaging Americans' youth is critical to ensuring that we have access to clean air, safe water, and healthy land, not only for this generation, but for future generations. This generation is sounding the alarm. You're grabbing the attention for those of us in power, and you're sparking a global conversation about many of the urgent issues that we face, not only including climate change, but also emerging issues like PFAS. You are also making your voices heard and about the kind of world that we all want to live in, that we want our children and our grandchildren to live in. You have given us a lot to think about, and we are very grateful for your service, for your insights, and for your leadership to our country and to EPA. So again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And now I will turn it back to Rhonda.
Thank you so much, Acting Deputy Administrator Nishidi, for your remarks. I also want to thank the council members for all of your hard work and dedication to provide EPA with these recommendations. We greatly appreciate them. I know the council members are excited and ready to not only provide the administrator and the EPA their advice and recommendations, but to receive the next set of charge questions. A few housekeeping reminders. The public comment period will remain open until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on November 5th, 2024. The agenda and meeting material will be made available on the NEYAC's website and in the public docket in the coming days. Additionally, minutes of this meeting will be prepared. The minutes will include a description of the matters discussed and the conclusions reached by the NEYAC members. The minutes and the recording of this meeting will be made available through NEYAC's website in the coming weeks. The next meeting is scheduled for early 2025. A notice of the exact dates and times will be issued in the Federal Register and posted on NEYAC's website. Again, thank you for joining us during today's NEYAC meeting. I now am adjourning this National Environmental Youth Advisory Council